Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scotty Milas, franchisecoach.com. All Things Considered Franchising is a podcast series devoted to the entrepreneur, people who are interested in exploring business ownership, franchise opportunities, or even just an open discussion on owning your own business, exiting corporate America, diversifying a portfolio. Scotty Milas, franchisecoach.com is a consulting organization that I own, that I help people build a business model and then, of course, introduce them to the opportunities that fit or decide if franchising is relevant for them or not. I have a kind of a unique guest today, a guy that I probably met. Oh gosh, I was thinking about this before we hit the record button. Probably about 6-7 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when he was just kind of getting into franchising, so maybe a little longer than that. Kind of a firecracker type attitude guy, and he brings a lot to the table. I met him on the lead generation side many years ago when he was working for a data company, and I'm pleased to welcome Anthony Spagnola. Anthony is with Horsepower Brands and is a director of franchise development for Mighty Dog Roofing. Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I still remember that first time I met you. I think I don't know if we were in Orlando or Texas somewhere, but you had an interesting career prior to getting into franchising, and then of course got into franchising. Was on the data side, helping guys, brands like myself, with lead generation, and then really kind of saw the upside to being on the development side, and kind of went into the brand side. And of course, now you're with Josh and Zach over at Horsepower Brands. But tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into franchising, and just kind of go from there.
Sure. Yeah, I started off my career in like software and marketing. I worked for a bunch of tech startups out of New York City, and one of them wanted me to start like an enterprise sales division. So that kind of got me selling into franchise companies. Went to Metric Collective, selling lead generation, like you mentioned, for franchise help and Be the Boss. And then we had a texting software called FranFunnel. So that was kind of my first intro into the franchise world. I fell in love with it, ended up leaving there, becoming an independent consultant. I actually helped build a franchise company with some friends. I became a franchisee. I had 2 restaurant franchises out of New Jersey for a little while there. And now I'm on the development side. So I've been on pretty much every side of the table in franchising, and it's been about 10 years now.
You are what I consider to be the new generation, those young guns coming into franchising. I mean, 10 years is still a tenured and expertise within the industry, but your generation, your enthusiasm, and the ability and the want, I call it, to want to be part of the industry, because it's a growing industry, it's a changing industry, and to have people be successful as business owners is intriguing. So talk a little bit about your impressions about franchising, maybe why people should consider a franchise versus an independent, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into Mighty Dog Roofing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people don't realize how much stuff goes into running a business. Just from all the technology, all the software, all the vendor relationships you have to have with manufacturers, suppliers. There's so much that goes into it. So, if you're not super experienced in building, companies, it's hard. And I think there's a stat out there, something like 80% of small businesses fail within 5 years or something like that. You pretty much flip that on its head when you go into the franchise world, because franchises have proven, systems and processes. They have technology and software, and they have all the vendor relationships. So it just helps you get a jump start, and it's a much less risky way of starting a business. You're still the business owner. You're still a locally owned business, but you're nationally backed. So you have the support of a big company behind you to help ensure your success.
Yeah, that's great. The best way I heard to explain how it's different investing in a franchise as a startup versus developing your own systems as an independent is, to use a baseball analogy, you're starting on third base in a franchise. and you're trying to get home, and home being to be successful and to build profits and income. On an independent, you're really starting at home in the batter's box, and you're trying to get around the bases. So it was kind of a unique analogy that I thought that somebody described to me, a guest I had on the podcast, who told me that it's starting on third base. And you're right, there is a lot to owning a business. You and I have something in common. We were both in the food industry for many years, and it's not simply turning on the oven and taking an order. I mean, there's a lot of intricacies, product ordering, vendor relationships, everything that you need to run a business. And it's just not putting money in the register and taking out. I mean, it's unique. You're with Josh and Zach, Horsepower Brands, becoming a very, very relevant franchise sales organization, service-based businesses within the industry. And you've tapped into Mighty Dog Roofing, which I find to be a very, very unique business model. It sits in that category of a need, not so much a want, because you need a roof. It's that, it's something that just kind of keeps coming, one roof, set two roofs, three roofs, and before you know it, you have a pipeline. Tell us a little about Mighty Dog and what separates you in the industry and what makes you unique.
Yeah, so Mighty Dog, actually, it's a lot more than just roofing now. Roof replacements and repairs, that's our bread and butter, but we also offer siding, gutters, windows, and we just rolled out solar.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah, we do that for both residential and commercial. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity with a Mighty Dog because of all the different service lines you have to offer. It's pretty much anything on the exterior of the home at this point. So we're kind of a one-stop shop. We have a subcontractor model, which for some people might be scary if you've never worked with, contractors before. But I think that's the best part of Mighty Dog is we use subs for all the labor so that our franchisees can really just focus on sales and marketing. And that's what Mighty Dog is at the end of the day. We're not a roofing company or a construction company. We're a sales and marketing company. We've got so many competitive advantages from our branding and our marketing to the technology that we're using. We actually have a drone technology. It's an AI technology that flies the drone for you. It takes inspection of the roof. It reports back any damage. So that builds a lot of trust and credibility with the homeowner because now it's a third-party technology telling you that you have damage and you're actually able to show it to them. Saves you a lot of time. You don't have to get up on the roofs as often. And it's a great marketing tool. And we've got lots of cool technology like that. We've got sales presentation software, a canvassing software, a great CRM system, a visualizer tool, we call it, where you take a picture of the person's home and you can show them exactly what each type of shingle and each color actually looks like on their house. It's really neat. And then the vendor relationships. We're so big now that we've got national partnerships with manufacturers and suppliers. So we're getting the best possible pricing. We're getting better warranties and we're getting rebates back from everybody. And those rebates are getting paid directly to the franchisee to help offset their royalties.
That's interesting. So I'm just visualizing a conversation with a client right now and presenting Mighty Dog Roofing. And you mentioned the subcontractor model. Unique in a sense that the franchisee now does not have the employer responsibilities. Maybe it's benefits, maybe it's an employee handbook, all those little things that come into owning a business. But I can see the question that comes from people that I talk to, especially with today's labor market, is how are you finding or determining who your subcontractor partners are? And is it a list based on territory? Is it a national list, or is it, hey, this is your territory, now we're going to go help you find subcontractors? Walk us through that a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of people out there are scratching their heads right now and want to know how that's done, because it's unique.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. That's their biggest concern is how do I find good subcontractors? How do I ensure, quality control, if you're subbing out all the labor? And we've solved that problem pretty easily with those national partnerships. So in every market, there's roofing supply companies. those suppliers are already tapped into all the subcontractors in that market. They know the good ones from the bad ones. Most of those companies are owned by bigger companies that we're partnered with. So we lean on those suppliers to introduce our franchisees to the best subs in their market. And that's usually all it takes. We give you a list of the best subs, you reach out to them, you book them for a job, you figure out which ones you like to work with. You know, you may not get along with all of them, but you'll find
Right.
one or two, and those will be your go-to crews that you use for everything. They'll become like part of your core team. They just happen to be 1099. And if you have any trouble finding subs through the suppliers, which you probably won't unless you're in a very unique type of a market, then we actually have a staffing company called Recruit Z, and
Yep.
they have a program now just to help our franchisees find subcontractors for a very nominal fee. They'll go out, they'll find the sub for you, they'll vet them, they'll qualify them, and they'll set them up on a job for you.
That's interesting. So just to make sure that our audience understands, and we're talking to Anthony Spagnola of Franchise Development Manager for Horsepower Brands, who handles Mighty Dog Roofing, that a client goes and let's just say they facilitate a job, whether it's a roofing, a gutter job, they're going to then reach out to their database, the supplier database, and get introduced to contractors, subcontractors to perform that work if they're handed or get that opportunity to do that job, correct? I mean, I just want to make sure our audience understands this.
Yeah, exactly. I had actually a candidate actually put it to me the best. He said, so basically, he's like, you guys are catching the fish, and then you have subs that are basically skinning it and filleting it and deboning
Great
it.
way to put it.
It really is a great way to put it, because we're doing everything else that contractors, frankly, are not that good at, and they don't really like doing. We've got great marketing, and we've got a great sales presentation, and we've got the vendor relationships. So we order the materials, we schedule the subs, we do everything except for the actual labor. And then they show up, the materials are there, the subcontractors show up, they can knock out a full roof replacement in like a day, and everybody wins.
Interesting. That's an interesting model. So let's talk about the characteristics of your franchisees. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, is that there is a sales aptitude to this business model. You have to be comfortable going to someone's home or business, making a presentation. You mentioned the visuals, the drones, showing them what the project is going to look like based on the computer images, the illustrations. So am I correct? And I'm not talking about being a Willy Loman here, where you're knocking on doors and dialing for dollars, but you've got to get out there, network, and be able to make what I would call a boardroom presentation. Am I correct?
Yeah. It's very much an enterprise type of a model, though. So we're looking for business owners. We're not looking for construction people. We want somebody who can build a team and delegate those responsibilities. So you're right. Like, the franchisee shouldn't be having to go out there and knock on doors, but they
Right.
should have a team of salespeople that are doing that. It is important to have, that sales personality, that relationship builder type of person. If it's not the franchisee themselves, then they would usually hire either a GM or a sales manager that would kind of fill that role. So we do have some franchisees that are more, finance backgrounds or system processes type guys. But we do have a lot that have sales backgrounds, and that is a big piece of the business. I mean, we're doing most of the marketing behind the scenes. So our franchisees are really focused on sales.
Interesting. Now, when you say doing the marketing, is that more of the social media, the outreach to the territories? Do you have an in-house call center where you're handling calls, maybe scheduling appointments for the franchisees or their sales team? I mean, how are you handling all the marketing initiatives and scheduling?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of Mighty Dog Roofing and all the horsepower brands, is that we have a lot of horsepower behind us. And horsepower has a whole bunch of different companies under their umbrella, and a lot of them are service-based companies that were built to support our franchisees. So horsepower owns a full-blown marketing agency called Franchise Rocket. Franchise Rocket does all your marketing, from your social media to Google to
Great.
online directories, you name it. And then we also have a director of marketing at the corporate level who helps you with more kind of local, mailers and events and things like that. And then you're right, we actually have a call center as well, in-house, Powerhouse Call Solutions. We've got people picking up the phones, calling your leads back 7 days a week to actually book those inspections and those estimates for the franchisee.
Interesting. Talk to us a little bit about the investment level. Give us a profile of a territory. Kind of paint that picture for our listeners here on what we're talking about investment wise, scalability. For someone to get into the business.
Sure. So you'll see, if you see our item 7, the initial investment requirements, you'll notice we have a lot more items on there than most other companies. And, it's because we're being very transparent. We know all the stuff you're going to need throughout the year. So we include a lot more stuff into our item 7. We even go as far as including the first 12 months for a lot of those expenses. And we do that so that, there's no surprises.
No surprises. Yep.
You can hit the ground running with a really healthy budget. But it also allows you to take advantage of SBA financing. The more we front load into that item 7, you can include all that into your loan. So if you're looking at our total investment in our item 7, comparing it to another brand outside of horsepower, it's really not apples to apples. We're including a lot more stuff in there. But with that said, our total investment for one territory ranges between about $215,000 to $320,000. That would be for one territory. Now, if you go to 2 or 3 or up to 5 territories, you could do. The only cost that changes is the franchise fee, and you get discounts as you add more territories. Right. So it's actually not that much more to do a few territories. Most people are doing 3 territories. That's the most popular. And for a 3 territory, people are usually budgeting somewhere around 400,000. You could get away maybe even 350,000, something like that for a 3-pack.
It's interesting because that the investment range is a real comfortable range in a service-based business that has multiple revenue streams. And I think I really want to kind of put those 3 stars or 4 or 5 stars next to Mighty Dog Roofing, because of what I like is multiple revenue drivers. Your briefcase, your toolbox in this case, because it's service based, has multiple revenue drivers. You're just not selling one type of roof, one type of shingle, walking away. You could potentially do a roof or repair a roof for somebody, and then in 6 months, 3 months, or whatever, be called back to repair a gutter or replace gutters. So again, it's really anything, multiple revenue drivers, correct? I mean, am I wrong?
Absolutely, because by having all those additional services, like you said, it's a good foot in the door to start building a relationship. Maybe someone doesn't need their roof replaced yet, but maybe you can go in and just replace one window that has a draft, or you do that little repair job that nobody else wants to do. Now you have that relationship, and then maybe it's them or a family or a friend down the road needs a roof, and they end up calling you in for a referral, or it's great to bundle in those services to increase that average ticket. Our average tickets are already some of the highest in the industry because roof replacements are one of the most expensive things you're going to do to your house. But when you start bundling in gutters and a few windows and things like that,
right,
that can be a very high average ticket. Then when you throw in commercial jobs, forget about it. I mean, there's commercial opportunities out there for hundreds of thousands of dollars for one job, for one project.
That's interesting. So multiple revenue streams, multiple revenue drivers, the ability to not only provide one service, but multiple services, products that you can sell somebody, which makes obviously referrals a lot more popular. It's like, oh, you do gutters. By the way, my neighbor down the street was mentioning he needs his gutters. Let me give you his name because you may want to reach him. So the referral program probably works a lot better with multiple revenue drivers as well.
Yeah. Another big one for referrals is that realtors and insurance agents. Those are huge referral sources for us. So that's a part of our marketing and customer acquisition strategy is, I like to drop it into like 3 buckets. Bucket number 1 is online marketing. Franchise Rocket does all that for you. Bucket number 2 is canvassing. So there is an aspect of knocking on doors, but we do it very smart. We have a software behind it. If you're going out for an appointment, hit a few doors on the right, a few doors on the left, a few doors across the street. And then networking is the 3rd bucket. And that's going and joining your local chamber of commerce or BNI group. It's sponsoring a luncheon for local realtors and insurance agents. Maybe exhibiting at a local home show, because there's no better lead than a referral.
Yep. We always talk about profiles of franchisees that are coming into Mighty Dog Roofing, or in general. It's always a topic. You mentioned that you're looking for entrepreneurs, people that know how to manage a business, can delegate a business. You're not looking for someone necessarily that has to get up on the roof and, hammer in the nail, so to speak. Although, obviously owners, if that's what they want to do occasionally, that's fine. But is there anybody interesting, or profiles or of franchisees that have come in from, the corporate world, or employment, that kind of surprised you, that are doing very well? I mean, kind of like you never visioned X coming in, from that background into our system. Are there any surprises of backgrounds that you can, share with us?
Yeah, I mean, we have such a great mix of different backgrounds throughout the system, and that's what makes the franchise system so special. Is we've got so many smart people from so many different backgrounds, and we can all kind of put our heads together and come up with different ideas. But we've got a lot of what we call like corporate refugees, people who are in corporate finance and things like that, and just really wanted to get out and start their own business. We've got people who are, coming from medical device sales, all different types of backgrounds. We've got a lot of husband and wife kind of duos, and even father and son duos. So we see a lot of family businesses, which is really exciting. So really, there's not one specific background that we see doing better than anyone else. I think, anybody with that empire builder mentality, that's the thing, is we want someone to work on their business, not in their business, and really build and scale a team. So team building, I think, is really important. And maybe that's not for everybody, but that's what really makes a successful Mighty Dog, is building a strong sales team.
Right. Well, we've been talking to Anthony Spagnola, Director of Franchise Development over at Horsepower Brands. He is the Franchise Development Manager for Mighty Dog Roofing, a unique service-based brand, multiple revenue streams for both residential and commercial. Anthony, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and talk to you about Mighty Dog Roofing or franchising in general, maybe questioning whether they should make that leap into business ownership, what would be the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way would probably be to email me. It's aspagnola@horsepowerbrands.com. You can also go to mightydogroofing.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Anthony Spagnola. One thing that I haven't mentioned that I definitely want to throw in before we cut this short is that we actually just won a whole bunch of awards for Entrepreneur 2023. We ranked the 11th fastest growing franchise company in the world, actually. And then we ranked #1 for top new and emerging franchises, also best in category. And it's because we have some of the highest average unit volumes in the industry. So our first or second year franchisees, so brand new franchisees, they're averaging 75% of them averaged over $1.5 million in annual revenue in 2022. So this is an opportunity that scales really, really quickly. So definitely hit me up on LinkedIn, email me. I'd love to take you through our process, and I'd love to introduce you to some of our franchisees so you can kind of hear it from the horse's mouth.
That's an interesting model. And one of the interesting things about this model, just to close out here, is that on the management side of the business, where the owner is going to be responsible, the franchisee, the management, the delegation, the coordination of subcontractors, this is really a Monday through Friday type business. I mean, this isn't like a retail where you're open 7 days a week. I mean, it's Monday through Friday, and then you probably have site managers through the subcontractors that are managing the sites and the work that you're doing. Is that correct? Right. So there is that work-life balance, I guess. That's my point.
Absolutely. And that's why we have the call center too, because they're working for you behind the scenes 7 days a week. They're working when you're spending time with your families, so that you can, have that work-life, balance.
That's great. Well, Anthony, anything you like to close with? Anything else that I forgot to ask you? Anything you want to leave out? I mean, it's always great to catch up with you. Like I said, you're just a firecracker in this industry, and there's always this excitement with you when you sit down and chat, whether it's over a meal or just a beer. You bring a lot of light to the room in regards to franchising in business. I mean, but is there anything you want to close with? Anything you want to say?
No, that was really nice. I feel like I'm blushing over here. So thank you for the compliment. But now honestly, like, we have discovery days here, in Omaha, Nebraska at our corporate headquarters. It's one of the most amazing events you could ever come to, is a horsepower discovery day. We do them for candidates, and we also do them for consultants. If you've never been
Yes,
here, we'd love to have you out. And our candidates get to meet franchisees. They get to meet all the members of the corporate team. They get to meet a lot of our third-party vendors, and they actually fly out here every month to meet our franchisees. That's how great our relationships are. So anyone who comes into my process, would love to get them to a point where they're coming out to Discovery Day, because I think it would really blow them away.
wow, that's good to know. And having known Josh and a lot of brands that he's built, and Zach, I can tell you, you're absolutely right. I would have to say that Josh and Zach, especially Josh, when it comes to discovery days, they probably throw the best discovery days I've ever seen or been part of. So,
Yeah,
but anyway, Anthony, thanks for joining us. We've been talking again with Anthony Spagnola, Director of Franchise Development with Horsepower Brands, Mighty Dog Roofing. I am Scotty Milas, your host of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. Anyone has any questions regarding Mighty Dog Roofing, please reach out to Anthony or give me a call. You can reach me at 860-751-9126 or visit my website, scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. And of course, visit Applefly, Spotify, so all the other social media type outlets to listen to All Things Considered Franchising. Anthony, great to have you. And we look forward to having you back on somewhere down the road within the next 4 to 6 months.
All right. Thanks for having me, Scott. Great seeing you.
Thank you.